Hello, this is TurboDog702. The submission video is going to be Castlevania Adventure Rebirth. It's a Classicvania that was released on Wii Virtual Console. So preface for this game is extremely RNG heavy. Even this very first screen has luck involved with the spawns of the enemies and your ability to bypass them without slowing down. We're going to see a slight bit of slowdown here because of that with this enemy spawn. Because of the way this enemy spawned, I had to jump and run up against the wall there for a short time. Otherwise, I would have bounced into him, and I couldn't get a damage boost that would lift me onto the platform either. And it's little things like that that are just going to be prevalent all over the game. It's a struggle to find single screens that don't have some sort of luck involved in them. So really one of your main goals is to try to cope with what the game has given you and hedge your bets for success. The strats that I'm going to be using inside of this particular run are based on a more marathon-safe, marathon-friendly setup. This run will break the 24-minute mark. It'll be inside the 23 minutes. World record for this game is inside the 20-minute mark. However, that uses much more dangerous strats with a much more experienced runner. I do plan on improving my time in this, as it is part of a Castlevania project that I am engaged in. So I'm going to be playing this kind of regardless of what's happening for at least a bit longer. Big thing with the bat here, every time you hit him 3 times, he will disappear and reform. And your job is just to get set up as best as you can with him. I want to pick up 16 hearts, which is why I broke that clock. We use the stopwatch here in order to stop the enemies inside this screen, as they can be kind of problematic for navigating around them. Whipping this guy, it is possible to jump over him and either make a clean jump or damage boost over. But again, for the sake of a marathon safe thing, it's cost of a second to, guarantee the speed of it. So this boss, the Eye, has some luck involved with hitting him. If you hit him on the ground, sometimes you will bounce, other times you will do a small bounce. In this case, I had relatively good luck. You'll notice that he is not bouncing particularly high here, which allows me to put out much higher DPS than normal. If the Eye ends up bouncing higher, you have to do a jump combo or reposition yourself to try and do more damage. Regardless, that was a pretty strong stage in general. Our main issue was at the very beginning of the stage. We bumped into a wall, and the bat gave us kind of poor luck on its spawns. The way it reforms is kind of has a degree of randomness as well. Nothing too terrible, but it will cost you a couple seconds if you get bad luck. Nice strat here to be able to navigate all of these knights. I spent a fair bit of time studying some other runs to come up with a strategy that implements safety from one strategy with the speed of another. You know you did this screen well when you bypass this guy right here. It is possible to beat him without taking a hit, but even taking that hit is totally fine for the purpose of speed. Slight input error here. I pressed down and I didn't get a crouch there to be able to hit that rat before it hit me. It's another screen that I'm pretty proud of how many improvements I've made to it. It looks really cool too, to see like all of the enemies kind of chasing after you with their erratic patterns. I have been developing strategies in order to mitigate the risk of getting hit there. So far I haven't come up with a perfect one. That one was pretty close to what I wanted to do. However, there does seem to be some sort of issue with the collision on the whip and attacking the rat as it hits the edge. Using the stopwatch here to kind of manipulate enemy spawns and movement to be able to get through there just fine. We're going to be hitting an auto-scroller here. Nice little downtime to kind of contemplate what's been happening up to this point. Now, we don't really need a lot of hearts for sub-weapon ammo for the upcoming boss. I guess I could talk a little bit about the general mechanics and why I enjoy this game. In this game, you have a 2-directional whip. It's not 8-directional like Super Castlevania 4. But you do have jump control like Castlevania 4. So while you don't have the most agile whip, you have a great jump. Using a whip cancel here in order to try and reduce the amount of time I'm spent recovering from a big fall. If you do that a little bit better, you can make that cycle and save about 1.5 seconds. Kind of get back to what I was mentioning with other mechanics here in a moment. So this is going to be one of the first real errors. This game loves to drop jump inputs, and that happens here. So normally you'd be able to jump onto that platform and get up top and continue on, but because it dropped my jump input, the Fleeman actually gave us basically the worst pattern that he could. So it was a combination of a drop of an input and the Fleeman giving us a poor pattern that just punished us pretty poorly. So this is kind of a Frankenstein's monster, kind of a Jekyll and Hyde thing. We're not really going to get to see his thin, agile form, but you are going to get to see this big dude chucking boulders and such. Whether he chooses to punch the ground or jump into the air and throw down stones is, again, based on luck. You're just hoping that he stays in a ground pattern and try to put out as much damage as you can. The unfortunate thing about that one is he was punching in such a rhythm that it was difficult to put out DPS with the whip while also blocking his attacks. So that was a little bit frustrating, but we got through it. Next room is very much about placing your axe as well and hoping that the guy below me on the left here doesn't throw a bone in a bad place. So he threw it, but he didn't throw it in a terrible place there. If that guy decides to, he can just destroy your day and make you fall down and you have to climb back up. That skeleton at the bottom of that room can also throw a bone that is undodgeable if you're trying to go as fast as possible. In that case, you just kind of got to concede some time and continue on. This is a room that's all about cycles, making these harpoon cycles and making your way up. So it is possible to damage boost on this spear or on this bat to get on top of this spear. I also discovered, or rather researched a strat where you're able to get on top of the spear and thus not take a hit. I have been trying to implement that as I can, but there is a little bit of research to be done regarding the bat movement. This bridge can be kind of tricky depending, again, if the blue skeletons decide to engage you or not. White skeletons, for the most part, aren't too problematic, but the blue ones have very erratic movements. You cannot jump on top of bone pillars in this game, so it is important to kill 2 of them to give us enough space to be able to jump over them. Here you're going to see me whip cancel some of my big falls in order to save a little bit of time and progress quicker. It's sometimes possible to make that crusher cycle to hit this secret path if you get a good damage boost. Since I had good health, I take this damage boost to get down faster. However, I will pick up the health here since it's just a short amount of time, and again, for a marathon safe run, you want to try to have as much health as possible to combat all of the things that can kind of go wrong. Once again, using a whip cancel to reduce our fall damage there. It is possible to slip past that spear, but it is a little bit of a tight window, and my whip cancel on the ground wasn't the best. Pretty proud of this strat. Really important to stop right here. That allows you to react to whatever this guy does and deal with him appropriately. Otherwise, you could potentially take upwards of 4 to 6 damage, which can be a problem for certain rooms. So this room is all about kind of rushing this blade on the right cycle, making this jump, and then damage boosting. That damage boost allows us the invincibility to ignore any Medusa heads spawning on the left side of the screen, and make it through that room with much less hassle, much quicker. If I was low on health, then I could decide to take that room slower, but I would have to wait on Medusa head spawns to hope things went well. This boss is very much about hoping that he comes low enough that you can hit with your whip, and when it doesn't, you're hoping that it stays still long enough for you to get double hits with your axe. Speaking about damage inside of this game, the reason your whip is the strongest weapon. Like, per hit, it will do more damage than any other weapon inside of the game by a fair amount. So you want to try to use your whip on bosses as much as you can. The sub-weapons, thus, are more for utility, although they can do pretty strong damage as well. So, again, you have jump control, and you only have a two-directional whip, but your whip's very strong. So it's this very, very good balancing act. I actually got into this game not too long ago. Earlier this year is when I picked it up when the Wii Shop was closing down. And it's actually my favorite Classicvania. Like, just with the way they balanced out the game and with the way the game presents you bosses and enemies, it's really fantastic. The speedrun is brutal because of all the luck involved, but the actual game itself is fantastic. The damage boost you saw me take there isn't a big deal. I would have either had to have waited for the chandelier to fall down or taken the damage boost. It just depends how good the whip cancel goes when you jump off the top. This staircase is pretty brutal. You have to deal with the randomness of Medusa head spawns and bone, or blue bone guys. You'll notice I get hit right here. So the thing is it's very hard to tell the arc at which a skeleton is throwing a bone off screen. And by the time it comes back on screen and you know the way it's coming, it's too late. A little bit of a door maze here. Each of these doors, there's one route through here, and you have to pick the right one. A little bit of a sequence break. We use the axe to pick up that key early. So keys, we picked up one earlier. What they allow you to do is open up secret paths and doors like this one. This game does feature branching paths, very similar to like a Rondo of Blood. And by picking up that key first, we save about 15 seconds of backtracking and fighting enemies. So it's much safer and saves time. I gotta concede this platform to this Lizardman. There is the ability to jump up and hit his swords as he throws them, but it's a very tight timing window and not very safe. Gonna have to deal with these rat boys here as we continue on. As you can say, a very fast-paced game, trying to find places where I can kind of discuss some of the game mechanics in here. So a big part about this is jumping and whipping so that you can maintain your forward momentum as you attack. However, depending on the positioning of the enemy, that isn't always an option. A lot of really nice jumping in this game is probably one of the things that I do like in the speedrun, is you can do some really fancy stuff. So the next boss. Next boss is kind of rough. I only just recently had or developed a strategy that I think works out relatively well for him. So you can immediately rush him past these punches on the first phase. You need to clear the golems on his hands and then on his body. Here you're trying to put out as much damage as you can with your whip. You want to try to get between basically 6 attacks. Here I'm crouching to try and manipulate the boss's AI. It also gives me a good visual cue for reacting to if he's going to punch close or far away. It's not 100% on if it works or not, but it's pretty good. So where the luck comes with this boss is depending on if he decides to jump a little faster or a little slower, or if you get a cross hit rather than a whip hit, this can happen. So in this case, I'm going to get a 4-cycle fight. It is possible to get a 3-cycle, but it just depends on how your cross interacts with the golems and with the boss. There are things that you can do to improve your chances on it, but can't win them all. Another thing that can happen is the way that the golems spawn and walk is a bit against you as well, because if they take certain patterns, it can be difficult to jump on him quickly and get in your whips as soon as possible. So there I kind of had a mental blank and immediately threw that 4 health in the trash. These guys, you need to hit them twice on the ground at least, depending on what you hit them with. Little sequence break here. By jumping on this clock at the right time, you can get on the platform above you rather than going past the entire room. So stage 5 is all about threat mitigation. Everything in here, just like the original Classicvania, does 4 damage to you. You take 4 hits, and then you die. So your health is at an extreme premium here. And because of that, you're going to see me take a lot of safe strats in order to deal with this place. For example here, since I had taken 2 hits already, I actually opt to just take a slower strat for this first part of the room and eliminate that eye. Normally I would walk up to the platform I'm on now and use the backswing on the whip to be able to hit the eye as I clear the ectoplasms. Unfortunately, because of that, I had to deal with this guy running to the edge of the platform, so I had to jump backwards. You're noticing small blue ghosts spawning. Those spawns are entirely random. I have had them literally spawn on top of me or spawn off screen and immediately rush me. They do 4 damage as well, so very easy for them to hit you as well. So, I mean, really, when you're talking about marathon safety for this run, this is the stage. Like, when everything does a quarter of your health, it is imperative that you kind of take your time, plan out how you're going to approach things, and just try to hedge your bets towards safety. I need to kind of race this automaton here to the staircase, otherwise he will block it extremely effectively. Game 8, my jump there. I wanted to jump up and hit this skeleton, and after that pick up the meat, which I'm going to do now. I wanted to clear the skeleton first, because otherwise if the skeleton throws his bone, it would remove the health that I would get from the meat anyway. So because I had kind of a slower room, I take a little bit of a risky strat here. Normally I would wait on a cycle where I was guaranteed to knock at a Medusa head, and I could get past that kind of spinning clock dial without any issues. However, because I had kind of a rough start to this stage, I wanted to try to make up some time. So Frankenstein's monster. The important thing here is to put out a little bit of damage just outside of his range, and then after the second phase, when he starts his double attack, you want to damage boost through him. This allows you to output a bunch of damage before he turns around. Sometimes you get 2 phases, sometimes you get 3. It's just an extremely safe and fast way to fight him. Frank also only does 2 damage in this stage, so it's okay to take a hit or 2 against him. So here I'm going to pull up this automaton. You could either hit him and kill him or pull him like I did. Both are about the same speed. If I was more confident about my health, I could take a damage boost from this eye onto the platform above me. You'll see me drop onto that in a short bit. But again, because the goal of this stage is to just not take a death, like you want to do as much as you can to promote that. I do hope to improve this to the point where I can do kind of the more risky strats for a marathon setting. But I thought it was much more integral to practice things that would be applicable for dangerous things. So this is a dangerous room because of the 2 skeletons above me. I have no real way to combat them. I just have to react to how they throw their bones and hope for the best. Had I taken a death earlier in this stage, you can actually pick up an axe and mitigate the danger of them pretty well. However, the cross is a fantastic weapon for a fair number of these screens. So if this guy decided to follow me on the right, I could kill him off with a cross instead, but since he went off to the side, I can just bypass him. That eye looks like it's really dangerous, and it looks really slick, but it's actually completely safe. So at this point, I'm feeling pretty good about stuff. My health is in a pretty nice place. This is a auto-scroller, but it's, as you can see, a relatively active one and kind of dangerous. You need to be very cognizant of these poison bulbs or poison plants, whatever you want to call them. Got to dodge the bouncing fart gas. These Medusa heads seem really dangerous, but because you're ascending this, they aren't as bad. So this is another place where something that seems like a major error occurs, and once again it's related to that dropping jump inputs that I was referring to. So I get on top of here just fine, and I probably could have jumped to make that cycle, but again, I wanted to make sure that I was being safe with this. I jump up here, and I tried to jump and whip, and then as I landed on the bottom platform, I tried to re-jump again so that I could catch the platform while also whipping the enemy. But what happened is I ended up just walking off the cliff. So, unfortunately, this seems like a really sloppy stage until you actually get hands-on with the game and realize just how many jump inputs this game eats, and just how many things you have to keep track of and hope kind of go your way. Now, with all this in mind, you'd be like, well, why would you submit this if this is such a dangerous game to run? Well, it is a dangerous game to run, but as I mentioned, I am trying to implement safe strats that allow it. to be marathon safe. So while I will practice kind of more dangerous things, it is important to realize that in a marathon setting, you're not going to be able to do the craziest things possible in many types of games. Like, for example, because of the way that the eyeball spawned in here, I couldn't really safely jump onto that pendulum without potentially risking a death. We also have the meat right there, and we're going to be going into the death fight. Death does 2 pips of health as well, which is kind of nice. But his attack patterns, oh boy, his attack patterns. You're going to get to see some stuff here. So the goal here is to try to get as many whip attacks as we can, but the cross is still quite good here, as you can see. And yeah, we are jumping in this way to try to avoid as many of these sides as possible and push him into phase 2, which is here. Now, luckily, he goes low enough here that we can actually put out quite a bit of DPS with our whip on him. Cross is quite good in this phase for hitting him, but it also pushes him in a way that's hard to dodge his sides that are surrounding him with a shield. So that was actually a really strong death fight. He kind of did exactly what he needed to do in order for me to get a fair amount of time. Out of this entire run, I mentioned in Stage 2 that there was a dropped jump input. Stage 5 has a fair amount that I do want to improve inside of it. But again, a lot of that was just due to dropped jump commands more than anything else. And kind of coping with that and readjusting and getting back on base. So we're very quickly coming to the Dracula fight. So phase 1 Dracula, it is possible to get 3 hits on every teleport phase. However, the timing is quite strict. And you really don't want to take more than maybe 1 hit on phase 1, because we're going to have a lot more dangerous phases ahead that we might want to potentially tank damage for. So getting a fair amount of 3 hits actually in this fight. And you don't have to get 3 hits on every single teleport phase. But yeah, as you can see, you can miss 1 and still be alright. So this is phase 2. He will jump 3 times. The first 2 are small jumps. The third one will always be over the top of you, and then he'll do his flame breath. So while his pattern is set, the way he arranges his green shots is not, or the way he decides to jump. So because of that, you want to attempt to get 2 hits every jump phase, but that's not always possible. And again, it's just all about adjusting and playing to what the game gives you. Speaking of playing to what the game gives you, Drac Phase 3 has a variety of magic spells that he can cast both in Form 1 and Form 2. For example, these are ground explosions that I need to dodge. He also has lightning attacks that he can do, among other things. Phase 2, you need to hit him 3 times in order to extend these platforms so that you can hit his eyes, which are the weak spot. He's using his blue bubble spell and his electric ball spell here. The electric balls you can knock away, but they do take multiple hits in order to break. These eyes roll around and deal damage. Also, if they contact one another, they do explosions, as you just saw. So really, this is all about realizing that 3 hits will activate the platforms and getting yourself set up to be able to defeat Drac. As you can see, I tanked a fair amount of damage there, but that was all kind of expected based on the patterns he was giving me and where the positioning of his attacks were. And yeah, that's a 2346. With the timing on the leaderboards, they do it by first command, which would make this like a 2340. So yeah, there's a fair amount of work that still needs to be done on Stage 4. Stage 1, 2, and 3, I'm actually pretty comparable to world record. Stage 4 needs to get some work, but a lot of that work is more to do with unsafe strats rather than marathon safe ones. So I feel pretty good about Stage 4 as well. Stage 5, probably the one that I need to work on a little bit more. But again, still feel pretty confident about the work that I've been able to accomplish inside of the short period that I've had with this game so far. So I'll continue to work at this. Soft goal is going to be in the 22s, but I would love to get it into the 21s if possible. It's a very difficult game, not just to execute, but also, as mentioned, just grinding out the luck that's involved to get a high caliber run. You know, it's rough. Let's put it that way. And all you can do is just kind of cope with what the game gives you and set yourself up for success as much as possible. So, I mean, that's Castlevania The Adventure Rebirth. Fantastic game. Jump control mixed with a good two-directional whip is fantastic. Sub-weapons to be able to give you variety in combat and give you other options. Lots of inventive bosses with lots of different mechanics. Just all around a fantastic little game. Even if it is a little bit brutal to speedrun. But that's going to do it for this video. Potential incentives, I guess, talking about marathon submissions. There is a easy mode that only does 2 forms of Drac. It could potentially go a normal mode to use all 3 of them, and that's something that I would keep in mind for this. But that's going to do it for me. This is TurboDog702 for a submission video for Castlevania The Adventure Rebirth.